Okay, cool. Hey, everybody. Folks are starting to join. We'll give everybody a second to get logged in and set up. If someone wouldn't mind just sending a message in the chat to make sure they can hear me okay, that would be very helpful. Um, Thank you all for coming. Really excited to have George from Minutia back for another webinar. As I think most people probably know, we did a series of these together last year. They were a huge hit. We got a ton of great feedback. George is back for more. Today we'll be talking about AI. How do you avoid the topic of AI? I'm really interested to hear, George, about the experiments you all have been doing, what you've learned, your impressions after some good hands-on use. Um, so I'm going to hand it over to you in just a second. Also, a quick note on the chat. Two things. One, tell us where you're from. It's cool to see where folks are dialing in from. And then two, as you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll queue them up for George. If it makes sense to do it kind of in between slides, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll save them for the end. Okay, cool. George, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, Jimmy, and hello to everyone who is joining us today from wherever you may be. I will just share my screen with you. Just let me know if you can see what I see, and I will get started right away. So here we are.
Cool. Yeah, we can see.
Okay, then. So great. Let's get started. AI in content marketing. We are going to see many interesting things today. Some of which use cases, this will be a big chunk of the presentation, some limitations that AI has, some predictions that we have for the future, and more, okay? Before we do that, let me share a couple of things about me. My name is George Kassiotis. I'm the managing director at Minutia. We are an organic growth acceleration agency for B2B SaaS companies, and we help these companies accelerate organic growth through data-driven content marketing and SEO, okay? Now, as we entered 2023, there has been an explosion around the topic of information and like videos and content around the topic of AI. Okay, and as a content marketing agency, we couldn't just stay and stand and just monitor things without actually getting our hands a bit dirty and try to interact with these systems in order to understand whether or not first we have a reason to be afraid of them in terms of are they going to be like a replacement for us in the future, and at the same time to see whether or not there are some use cases that we can actually like leverage these systems to like our benefit for our services, to add more value to our clients, and so on and so forth. Okay, so before we jump into the use cases, which as I mentioned is going to be the biggest chunk of the presentation, the biggest like portion of it, we are going to see some basics just to make sure that we are all on the same page as to what these systems are and how they function, how they work. Okay, let me just say before we get started that like for the sake of this presentation, we are not going to discuss any other tools besides ChatGPT. And the main reason behind that is because most tools with generative AI capabilities are based in terms of their technology on the technology of like OpenAI. So, what's the point of discussing? They have some like different, let's say, capabilities and features, but for the most part, the tech behind them is the same. Okay, so we are going to discuss the source. Okay, let's get started. First of all, what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT is a large language model, LLM, okay, developed by OpenAI that is designed to respond to natural language inputs. In other words, what we share with the tool when we interact with it in a conversational manner, okay? It is a part of a family of large language models known as GPT, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Keep that because this is important. It is built using state-of-the-art machine learning algorithms and has been trained on massive amounts of text data, okay, in order to be able to generate the responses that we've all seen when we interacted with these systems. Okay, so we have three things here. The first is this is a large language model. The second is that it's part of a family of these models that is known as GPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And the last part that we need to keep like in mind is the fact that these like systems this specific system is trained on massive amounts of text data. Okay, so first of all, how? Let's take the first point. Okay, large language model. How are these models being developed? There are three main stages. We have pre-training, we have fine-tuning, and we have inference. Okay, let's see what these three stages that we saw are all about. First, we have pre-training, which essentially is the fact that the system needs to be pre-trained on large amounts of text data. Okay, this involves training the model to be in the position to predict the likelihood of each word in a sentence given the surrounding context, as much context as we have given or we can give, of course, right? Then the next stage is fine-tuning. When the model, the system has been pre-trained, it can be fine-tuned on specific tasks such as question answering or language translation. So essentially, yes, in the beginning we train the system and then we fine-tune it so that the responses actually make sense, or so that we can remove some biases that they may have based on the data that they have been trained on, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, we have inference, which, by the way, is the stage we are currently at every time we interact with a system like ChatGPT, where the system can be used now to generate responses to natural language prompts. Okay, so we have these stages, and these are the three stages in which, on a very high level, these models are being developed. Okay, how do they work now? So we have 5, but let me say we have added one more, which is the 6th one, refinement steps in that process. Okay, and I will go back and forth to the next slide here because the two slides are connected. Okay, so first of all, we have pre-processing, which essentially is the fact that the input text is pre-processed to convert it into a format that can be understood by the model. Okay, and the example here is that we have a sentence like, I need project management software. Okay, and this will be translated, let's say, by the system into a sequence of numbers like 3, 17, 5, and so on and so forth, so that it can understand it better. Okay, then we have encoding, where the pre-processed text is encoded by the model, which essentially involves passing through a series of layers in order to be able to basically understand what this prompt is all about, and then generate a response. Okay, so in our example, that would be that when someone is inserting an input or a prompt like, I need project management software, then chances are that, from what I understand, the person who is inserting that prompt, they are most likely to buy project management software. Okay, this is the process of encoding. Then we have prediction, where we can all understand that it's the fact that the text has been encoded after being pre-processed, and the model can make a prediction about the next word or phrase in the sequence. Okay, or in the sentence in our case. So in the sentence, I need project management software for, the system may predict, based on all the data that it has been trained on, that the next phrase here is small business. Okay. After that, the model then selects the most probable next word or phrase, and there is an endless cycle of these predictions essentially. What we're talking about is autocomplete on steroids. Okay, so in the example that we use here, I need the project management software for a small business too. The system will select the most likely word or phrase to follow this sequence, and will continue doing that until it gets to a level where the output is satisfactory for the user. Okay, the final output is then this is step number 5, as you can see here. The final output is then post-processed to convert it back into human readable text, what we get as a response, applying various normalization and formatting techniques, so that basically what the system shares with us is something that we can understand and accept as correct. Okay, of course, this is not always the case, because the output is not exactly refined or as we would like it to be. This is why there needs to be a dialogue between us and the system. Okay, so the output may be the sentence, I need project management software for a small business to help me organize and better manage my business, better or best based on the understanding of the system. But the truth is that, and this is why we've added essentially one more step, is because there needs to be a refinement here, because in many cases we see that we've seen that what the tool gives us back as like this is the most the highest, let's say, the highest probable result to like follow that word based on the context and everything that I have understood from the prompt is not right. Okay, it's simply not right. So in the example that we have here, maybe the output may be like, I need project management software for a small business to help me organize and better manage my business. But what we may be looking for is that, no, I need a project management software for a small business to help me manage client projects and employees. Okay, so there needs to be a refinement in most cases in order for us to reach a stage level where the result is absolutely satisfactory. Okay, now how is the text being generated? As you can see here, the prompt that we have for ChatGPT is, what are the most probable words to be added by ChatGPT after the following sentence in the order of their probability? Just to give you an understanding based on what we said previously, okay, about the steps that basically like the sequence of steps that these tools use in order to generate text, right, based on the prompt that we give them. So the sentence that we have given is, content marketing is a dynamic field with, and as you can see in the order of probability, like the results that ChatGPT gave us is the first one, a lot of potential for growth and innovation, a wide range of strategies and techniques, many different approaches and tools available. Now, the thing is that all of these are probable. And once again, essentially what we are talking about is that we have a system that can like autocomplete and generate responses based on probabilities, okay, based on the data that it has been trained on, and based on the most probable next word and phrase based on the input that it's like we have given it, okay. The third point that we mentioned based on the first slide, what is ChatGPT and how these like models work, is the training data that we have. And this is, I think, very important to note. This is a very important thing to note, because essentially it can, as we can see, as we will see later, this is connected to one of the biggest limitations of these systems, which is the fact that these systems are as good as the data they are trained on, right? So when it comes to their training data, we have web text, which is a data set that contains billions of words scraped from web pages of different topics and so on and so forth. We have a common crawl, which is another data set that contains petabytes of web crawl data from thousands of websites across the web. We have Wikipedia, of course. We all know what Wikipedia is. We have Book Corpus, which is a data set of over 11,000 books in the public domain. Okay. We have English GigaWord, a large corpus of English language news article that has been used to train language models for a variety of NLP tasks. And we have 1 billion word benchmark, which is another data set of over 1 billion words from news articles, books, web pages, and so on and so forth. These are the basic ones. There are other ones as well, okay? But once again, this is connected to one of the main limitations of these systems, which is, we can all accept and understand that Wikipedia or other like data sets in this like slide are by no means perfect. Okay, so the output and the like outcome of our, let's say, dialogues and conversations with these systems in many cases will not be, or to put it differently, will be as good as this data. Okay, now the question is, why is all this important for content marketing? And the answer is simple. Besides specific use cases for generative AI, content marketing is heavily based on text-based content. Okay, and since one of ChatGPT's main use cases is text generation, it's inevitable that generative AI will be important in the context of doing content marketing. Okay, so it's as simple as that, right? Now, of course, we can discuss about other content types like video and so on and so forth, but for the most part, we are very focused on like blog content or content that's based on text. So this is why it's important. Now, when it comes to the adoption stage, I would say, and this is, by the way, just our like way of viewing things, right? But I would say that right now we are somewhere between like, if we would like to kind of model that based on the diffusion of innovation theory, we would say that we are somewhere between like innovators and early adopters. Okay, will this thing reach mass adoption? I guess we just have to wait and see, right? We have to wait and see whether or not this will be like really the next big thing, or because right now there's a lot of noise around it, right? But I would say that we are in the early stages of adoption, and we just have to monitor all the changes that happen as like content marketers as closely as possible. Okay, now let's get to the interesting stuff, which is use cases for content marketing. Okay, and of course, these are the use cases that we have identified and like experimented with. There are many others, I assume, that you may have seen on LinkedIn, Twitter, like YouTube, and so on and so forth. Okay. The first one is generate blog topic ideas. As you can see here, the prompt is give me a few contrarian blog post titles for the topic of e-commerce marketing. And I would say that besides idea number 6, the rest of the ideas are unhelpful, and I could say even like quote unquote dangerous for an e-commerce business to write about. Okay. Now, if we refine that, and if we try to give another prompt and say that, you know what, no, these are not exactly like good ideas for e-commerce marketing. Can you please like give me something that like is focused on e-commerce marketing? It has truisms of e-commerce marketing and presents like an antithesis to this truism. And here, after a bit of refinement and back and forth with the tool, of course, and apart from ideas number 4 and number 8, we can see that the rest of the ideas are actually pretty good. Okay, and we could use them, like an e-commerce business could use them and write a blog post about them. Okay, so just a bit of back and forth, and I see generating blog topic ideas as a good use case for these systems. Okay, the second one, generate an HTML table. Okay, as you can see here, the prompt is, can you create an HTML table with as many as 10 comparison points on the topic of mountain bike vs road bike? Okay, and there has been an HTML table. What we did then is that we copied the code and tried to validate that to see whether or not this is like right, and if we were to use that on our website, it would be displayed properly. And as a matter of fact, we used code Beautify, as you can see here, and like there are no errors, there are no mistakes. Okay, and in this case, we happened to like ask the tool to give us like comparison points. We could also feed the tool with the comparison points and ask the tool to create the table by itself, right? And once again, it's a nice HTML table, but nothing that we couldn't get, for example, from a plugin if we were on WordPress. Okay. Then the third use case that we have is ask the tool to ask ChatGPT to generate schema markup. Okay. And as you can see, the prompt reads, can you create an article schema markup for the following blog post? Minutia.com/ClearScope guide. It's a guide that we wrote on how to use ClearScope. Okay. And actually, the ChatGPT has created the article schema markup for this blog post. Okay. And for the most part, like everything look fine at first. Okay. Then we validate the output that we got by using schema markup validator, and there are no errors or warnings. Okay, which is great. However, we have seen that the name and date published and date modified, which are parts of the schema markup that we have generated, are wrong. Okay, and we asked the tool, why are they wrong? Don't you scrape the content to give me the schema markup? And of course, the answer is, at least at this point, no. Okay, this is based on the data that like the tool has been trained on, and it's not like it's going to crawl the content and give us article schema markup or author schema markup or whatever, schema markup for that reason, that's tailored to that specific piece of content, okay? And I would say that this is, of course, a limitation, okay? Because it's not like something, we cannot use it as something dynamic as, for example, we would use a plugin, okay, that generates schema markup and also ensures that when something changes, like the date modified, this will reflect on the schema markup as well, okay? Then we have the fourth use case, which is keyword research, okay? And as you can see, our prompt is that our target audience includes the following job titles based on the research that we have done for one of our clients, okay? HR specialists, HR managers, HR directors, and so on and so forth. Can you give me a few keywords that we need to target if we want to reach that audience? As you can see, the output is a bit generic, and I wouldn't say that this can help us. We have to dive deeper, okay? And we have to refine the results until we reach a level that's somehow satisfactory, okay? So we focused on one of the terms that we, got initially, which is employee development, and asked the tool to kind of dive deeper into like that topic of employee development, okay? And we got some, as you can see, 20, keywords that like could potentially be targets for us and for our client. And what we did is that, and this is, by the way, a very simplistic way of validating these keywords, right? Because there are so many other things that you can do besides just inserting in like a tool like Ahrefs and like validating them for search volume to see if there is indeed demand and so on and so forth. But after this like small back and forth and dialogue, as you can see, the keywords that we got based on the topic of employee development exist in Ahrefs and could potentially be like keywords that we could add to our keyword database for this client, okay? And by the way, the tool we used here for validating the output was Ahrefs. You can use any other keyword data provider for that matter, okay? The fifth use case that we have seen is audience research, and we have tried to examine for. Once again, the prompt is the same. The only difference here is that we would like websites, these people visit, social media accounts they follow, media publications they consume content on, and anything else that could help us reach this audience, okay? Because we are in the process of audience research for one of our clients. The output, of course, we need to dig deeper here, not so deep, but like try to figure things out and see what is actually recommended. And some of the suggestions here actually seem promising, but we still have to validate them for relevancy and other factors. For example, to see if they are still active, because let's not forget that ChatGPT has a knowledge cutoff date, which according to some sources is September 2021. Not so sure about that, but we need to see, for example, if you suggest to me a podcast, is that still active? Because it may be that like this podcast because it was active back when you kind of trained, okay? Then we try to refine the output by asking for a few more podcasts, okay? And as you can see, we got some podcasts, and like the results here, after once again a bit of back and forth, look promising. These could be, of course, we need to validate them, like once again, see if they are active and so on and so forth. But this could be another use case for ChatGPT, okay? Doing audience research and trying to find places that like our audience may be hanging around online, spend time, and so on and so forth, okay? Number 6, this is very interesting. Content optimization, okay? And for us, content optimization includes many different aspects. Here, we will focus for the sake of this use case and example and presentation on the aspect of inserting semantically related keywords and entities inside the piece of content to ensure that it's relevant in the eyes of a search engine like Google, for example, okay? And as you can see, the prompt that we gave is that we want to write a piece of content on how to create an online course. Give me as many entities and semantically relevant keywords as possible to include in the piece, okay? We got some to begin with, and the initial output seems to be in the right direction, okay? However, we asked the tool to give us some more, okay? We want to, basically, the refining, let's say, prompt that we gave it is that we want to dive really deep into the topic of how to create an online course. Can you please give me some more keywords and like entities that we could include in this piece of content? Okay. At the same time, our tool of choice happens to be ClearScope. You may be using something else. That's fine. We generated a ClearScope report to see, what's the overlap between the terms that ChatGPT generated and how many of these terms are included in a report by ClearScope, which is one of the tools that we believe have state-of-the-art data when it comes to content optimization. Okay. And this is where things get interesting, because after the 2 prompts, ChatGPT generated 120 terms in general, in total, while ClearScope generated 65 terms. We didn't include custom terms here because ClearScope also has custom terms, right? That you can add manually to the report. Based on our calculations, and you will have access to this sheet, by the way, to see the terms, there were only 8 common terms, exact match between the 2 lists, and the total overlap was almost 12%. Okay, which is not so much. Okay, and of course this could tell us that, if we trust ClearScope when it comes to giving us the best results and the best data, the best keywords and entities, whatever, when it comes to that topic, and like we ask ChatGPT to kind of do something similar, and the overlap is not so high, then chances are that these terms may not be as relevant after all, right? We took this a step further, and we asked our friends at LearnWorlds, which is actually a tool, a platform that allows you to create an online course, to determine manually, of course, like a human being did that, right? Relevance for the terms that ChatGPT gave us, okay? And we had 2 columns, one kind of more loose relevance and one more strict. We, for the sake of this slide, we took into account the strict one. And as you can see, based on what people from LearnWorlds gave us for this output, for these 120 terms, not relevant, 21 terms were labeled as not relevant, okay? 47 were labeled as somehow relevant, and 52 were labeled as relevant, okay? Which kind of shows that the terms in general are in the right direction, even though the overlap between the terms that ChatGPT gave us and ClearScope gave us is not as high, okay? However, one important thing to note here, as feedback that we got by LearnWorlds, is the fact that these terms, these 120 terms, could be potential terms that we could cover through 2 or 3 or even more different blog posts, okay? However, once again, in this example, even though the results, of course, are not definitive because we just examined one term, if we want to be more specific, we need to do a larger scale, let's say, study. But we could see this content optimization as a potential use case moving forward, okay? For the time being, though, we will continue trusting ClearScope to help us when it comes to content optimization, okay? Then we have another use case, which is slightly different, actually very different, which is generating formulas and Python regular expressions. As you can see here, we asked ChatGPT, the prompt was to create a regex that extracts just the name George from the following piece of text, which is actually an email, okay? And the reason here, the use case here, is that we want to set up a Zap, by using Zapier, right? And we want to use specifically Zapier's formatter and extract the pattern. Essentially, we want to extract the name in these emails that we receive, okay? We had back and forth actually here, okay? We got some outputs, they were not right, we had to go back and ask again, and so on and so forth. So there was some back and forth, but after a few prompts and outputs, we managed to get a regex that was actually right, okay? And we were able to set up this formatter by Zapier, which is great. This is a great use case, and for someone who is not aware of Python or any formulas or whatever, for Google Sheets, another use case, this could be a great use case. Okay, there is a lot of back and forth in some cases, but we definitely see a use case here. The other one is customer research. Okay, we mentioned audience research, we mentioned keyword research. Now we will discuss customer research. As you can see, the prompt is that one of our competitors is project management software Asana. Can you please give me a few weak points of Asana regarding its product, pricing, customer support, etc., so we can use them in a comparison page? Okay, and as you can see, the tool has given us like 5 here in the screen, different points that could be considered like weak points for Asana that we could potentially use in a comparison page, like between like our tool, our solution, and Asana. Okay. However, after giving the tool a second prompt, which is, where did you find these points? Can I trust you? And add them to a comparison page, or this may mean, or like me adding these points in a comparison page, that we may lose potential customers because these points are inaccurate or they are not up to date. And as you can see, the response is not as satisfactory. And I would say that it shows us that we cannot really trust systems like that when it comes to conducting customer research. The ultimate source of, even if in the future there is like a better way to crawl data, to crawl accurate data, and like have not having a knowledge cut-off date, which is 2 years ago, right? So I think that customer research is not one of the use cases, and the best source of truth ultimately is our customers, and like asking people what they think about X tool, or like our tool, and so on and so forth. Okay. Then another use case that we had, blog post outlines. Okay, we asked, the prompt is to create a blog post outline for the following keyword: what is field service management? And let me jump off here just for a minute. As you can see here, we inserted, and you will have access to it, the outline that we got for the term what is field service management, what is field service management, which at first sight looks good, I would say. But at the same time, if you've been doing this for a while, you immediately can understand that it's kind of cookie cutter. And if 100 different people ask the same prompt and give the same prompt, they will get somehow like pretty similar results when it comes to like this blog post outline. Okay, and I think that this is a problem. And even though, once again, at first it looks very tempting, like, okay, that's it, like we have the outline, we can start working on content. After a bit of digging, you will see that what it does is that it basically gets information from like other websites, web pages, and so on. In this case, we highlight the benefits of field service management by IBM. If you see the benefits in the example that we shared, the output basically by ChatGPT, they're pretty similar. And I would say that that's not the only thing. This brief, lacks product knowledge, information gain, perspective, experience, and other elements that we feel are essential for differentiating ourselves from what's already out there. Okay. So an asterisk when it comes to blog post outlines, which we know is going to be one of the most like tempting use cases for ChatGPT, we feel that it's not to a level that you could say that we can create something that's like really that can really help us separate ourselves from competition. And at the same time, there will be a lot of input from a human to this like outline if you decide to use it in order to get it to a satisfactory level. Okay. Then we have content repurposing, and here things are kind of simple. Create a LinkedIn post based on the following intro from our latest blog post. We gave the intro, and then we got the output for LinkedIn. I mean, in general, it looks good, but it definitely needs a bit of refinement before actually using it on LinkedIn. Okay, so it could be that content repurposing is a use case, but I see that here as well there needs to be refinement before like getting to a stage where like this is exactly what you need and you can like publish it with confidence on LinkedIn, for example. Okay. Then we have email outreach. As you can see, the prompt was that we want to reach out to a few people to promote a new piece of content, which is a case study that we did for exploding topics. And we ask some things, and we give some like additional guidelines. Can you please write an email that includes a subtle joke on SEO, a reason why the recipient should link to our blog post, and a clear call to action. Okay, here we had this is the initial output. Not so good for you reaching out to someone and asking them to like link back to our piece of content. Chances are that they will just open it and click on like delete. After a lot of back and forth here, we got to a stage where we could use some elements. For example, the fact that the joke is we promise not to keyword stuff your inbox with endless follow-up emails. This is an element we could potentially use. But then again, this is something that we got after a lot of back and forth with the tool, many prompts and outputs and so on and so forth, and a lot of refinement, okay? But we could see with very specific directions, getting some elements that could be useful in the context of writing an email to reach out to people to promote a piece of content, for example, okay? Then we have title tags and meta descriptions, definitely a great use case. After all, who wants to do that, right? Write a title tag and meta description for a blog post that targets the following keyword: online collaboration tools. And I would say that the output here is inclusive for remote teams. That's great, to the point. And in general, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't use that as it is for our title tag and meta description. And then we have the holy grail, which is content creation. Okay, and here things get way more complex than all the use cases that we've seen so far. And someone who could say, why don't we just spin out words at the fraction of the cost, save time, and get results faster? Okay, we have three main arguments here. The first is that the data these systems are trained on make the probability of getting cookie cutter content that's not original by no means really high. Okay, as we saw earlier, and I wanted you to like kind of understand how the systems work. Basically, they are trained on things that exist already. It's not like you can expect something original that hasn't been served before by these systems. Okay, if you're fine with that, by the way, like then you should definitely use them, right? The output has to be refined, edited, fact-checked, and so on and so forth, which significantly increases the time to final draft and increases the final cost per content piece produced. In other words, there has to be human assistance or intervention, let's say, in order for the final outcome to be somehow satisfactory to be able to publish it online, right? And there is a high chance that content that's created with the sole purpose of getting organic visibility and clicks, which, by the way, is against of Google's guidelines. And this is just a kind of prediction. Okay, we will repeat it a bit later on. But there is a chance that this content moving forward will be depreciated by Google. Okay, and since in 2023, Google is still the most prominent search engine, I would say that you should factor in the risk of creating something that could like potentially get you your website or the company's the company that you're working on at risk when it comes to like we have content that's created by AI and it's focused on just getting organic visibility, and we got hit by an algorithm update. Okay, and of course right now things are very tempting, like everyone wants to interact with these systems, and one of the main use cases we explained why is create content. But the truth is that everyone wants to create AI content, but as we can see here in this screenshot, nobody wants to read it. At least that's what we see right now. Okay, and of course I know that, or let me take a step back and say that at Minusia we have a way for people to leave anonymous feedback, because we need to know what they feel about working at our company. And we see lately that some people are concerned when it comes to what's going on here. Like, are you folks going to replace us moving forward with like these tools and generative AI and generative content? And I know that this like resonates with many other people as well, content writers, content marketeers. There is kind of a concern in our industry where things are heading. Okay. And I would say that to begin with, you shouldn't be, and we shouldn't be afraid. As we can see here, this very nice tweet by Judith Lewis. Hot take: if you think ChatGPT is the end of journalism, you aren't a very good journalist. If you similarly think that ChatGPT is the death of writing about a niche topic, you are a writer. Okay. And I think that, for the most part, I agree with that, right? We shouldn't be afraid, but at the same time, we should understand that these systems, either we like it or not, exist, and we should interact with them, monitor the changes, and see how we can leverage them to become better at what we do. Okay. Do we have any questions before we move forward with the last section of this presentation?
No, I think we're good to keep going. But if folks do have questions, now is the time to start dropping them.
Okay, so limitations, predictions, and more. Okay, these are the limitations according to me. The first is that generative AI, hopefully, you can tell by the use cases that we've seen, is good for a variety of micro tasks. Okay, but I mean, let's be honest. For many of these tasks that I shared with you, there is usually a replacement. For example, for schema markup, why shouldn't we use a schema markup plugin? Okay, so yes, the tool has all these capabilities, but it's just a tool, right? It's not like it will replace the way things are done across all these different use cases that this tool can be used for, right? The second is obviously mistakes, that by no means these systems are perfect, and they know that they are not perfect, and they have serious limitations. For example, their knowledge cutoff date, which is essentially when they stopped, let's say, bit training on data, right? And of course need refinement, as we've seen. Then one of the main ones for content creation, originality. Okay, these systems don't have original thoughts, which is like one of the great characteristics of like us human beings, right? They don't have opinions or ideas, and I don't know, an asterisk here, how opinionated they will be in the future. And they are based on existing data and knowledge. Okay, once again, they are somehow autocomplete on steroids. Okay, however, they are a tool and they have limitations. They do mistakes, but they will get better as we interact with them. Okay, expect that they will definitely improve, and I would say that the improvement will not be just linear. It will definitely be like way more accelerated than that, right? According to ChatGPT now, when it comes to its limitations, of course, we have lack of real world knowledge, okay, which kind of overlaps with what I said in the previous slide. Biases in the training data, what we mentioned at the beginning, that these systems are as good as the data they have been trained on. Inability to understand context in several cases. Limited ability to handle complex reasoning, which is something that we people are good at in many cases. And of course, lack of emotional intelligence. Okay. Now the question is, should content marketers be afraid? Like, to begin with, no. Okay. However, there are some points that we would like to make when it comes to whether or not we should be afraid of these systems. The first, you should be afraid if you are a topic agnostic content writer who does not specialize in specific topics. I believe that if you're a content writer, now it's the best time to say that, you know what, I will go all in to these like 2-3 maximum topics. Okay. And like the number is totally random, by the way. The point I'm trying to make is that now it's the time to specialize and become real experts when it comes to very specific topics, which is not something that these systems will be able to beat as easily, okay? Regardless of the fact that they will get better as they evolve, right? You should be afraid if you are a content writer who works only in specific content formats. The first content format to fall, of course, is SEO content, right? and it will be abused for sure. But we have seen that, we have mentioned, and this will be, of course, one of our predictions, that this may be kind of a loophole and feel like a loophole right now. But moving forward, we may see algorithm updates that specifically target this piece of content. Okay, so in the context of like, should we be afraid or should we change something in the way we do things? The answer is that you shouldn't limit yourself in just creating, something as commoditized as SEO content. Okay, you should be afraid if your content creation process does not take into account the product or the service you are writing about. Otherwise, it's just words. Okay, and if it's just words, well, ChatGPT is doing words as well, and it doesn't charge $1 per word. Okay, you should be afraid if your content creation process starts and ends with words and does not expand in other areas, for example, graphic design, UX design, and so on and so forth. You should be afraid, and this is connected to something that we mentioned earlier about customer research, if your content creation process and like the way you strategize and do things does not involve interviewing customers, product owners from the company, stakeholders, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, you should be afraid if you are reluctant to monitor the changes in your industry and interact with the systems, even if, as we mentioned earlier, they don't reach mass adoption. Okay. Now, the question is, okay, what can we do? First, you need to stay up to date. Okay. Do not look the other way. You need to stay on top of the changes, interact with the systems, and talk about it. And if you are at an agency, work at an agency, or as a freelancer, consultant, whatever, keep in mind that your clients, chances are that they are looking for information out there. Okay, it's better if the source of information is you about like these systems, how to interact with them, what the limitations are, what the use cases are, and so on and so forth, than to go somewhere else to consume content on. Okay, work on other content types. Because we are in the early stages of adoption, we don't know yet how things will look like in like 3-5 years from now. Okay, don't be afraid about being replaced by machines, let's say, but actively do something about it. And we had a great webinar with Superpath. We've dropped the link in the resources slide on original content and this concept of like your content strategy should be, beyond just like product focused content and SEO content. Okay, you should definitely check it out. Definitely start talking to your customers. This is not something that AI yet can do. So, and in the context of like your customers are the ultimate source of truth, you need to get closer to them and start using their voice to the content that you produce. Okay, and of course, upskill and reskill. Everything that you can do to stay relevant is, something that's, if anything, is necessary right now. Okay, because things change and they change fast. Okay, we have some predictions, and I think that this is the last slide. The first prediction is that the content value, of course, the value of content in general will drop. We will see more and more low quality content online. I think that we expect that in the context of there will be an explosion of like content generated by AI, and a lot of this content will be, not the best quality, let's say. Okay, and if you think about it, my personal opinion is that this is not good for anyone, because what happens in a market, let's say, if we want to kind of make a metaphor here, what happens in a market where there's more money in the market? Well, of course, to begin with, it feels good, like there's more money in the market, but at the same time, the problem is that the value of money goes down. Okay, and in the same way, we expect that there will be more content in the market, and unfortunately, the value of content will drop. Okay, then something that's kind of connected to that, content consumption will decrease as well, and the reason is supply will surpass demand. There will be so much content out there. I mean, what's the point of it all? Who is going to read all that content? So we expect that content consumption will decrease, okay, as supply will surpass demand, then we feel that there is a chance that we will see more gated content, which is going to be content that's created by humans, which means, as I see it, that we will kind of go backwards instead of moving forward. Why? Because I wanted to believe that gated content and these like endless forms just to get an ebook belong to the past. But unfortunately, if we accept that there will be a lot of content with low value, the high value content will have to be protected somehow, right? And this quote unquote protection will be a gate, and there will be like an email or all sorts of information that there will be asked in order to get access to that like valuable piece of content, right? And we also believe that content that's created by humans in communities, for example Slack groups like Superpath, will increase. Okay, then labeling, number 4. There has to be, moving forward, a way to label content that's created by AI, or at least AI has contributed to creating this piece of content. For example, 70% of this piece of content was written by AI and edited by humans. Of course, you don't need me to tell you that there will be an abuse. And as it so happens with these loopholes, Google will have a hard time, of course, crawling all this new content, because there will be an explosion when it comes to how much content there is out there. And eventually, as it so happens in these cases, Google will decide to do something about it, and many websites will be penalized. Okay, and last but not least, this is something that I personally, see as a potential danger. There, as I understand it, moving forward, there is a danger of having a monopoly. Okay, what kind of monopoly? The fact that a handful of companies will monopolize generative AI and content in general, and thus SaaS companies that are based on their technology may have a hard time if the company owning the supply decides to, say, shut it down, distribute it itself, or like double, triple, quadruple the prices for having access to its API. Okay, here we have some resources that I recommend that you take a look at. Some of them webinars, one of them a very in-depth analysis of ChatGPT and like how it works, and that would be it.
Cool. That was awesome, George, and really good timing too. We do have a couple minutes for questions, so if folks have them, drop them. I have one myself too, but I want to queue up one here, George, that's related to your point about the potential for monopolies. Someone asked, do you think it's likely that Google search results will be full of AI content in a few years? And does that mean only existing incumbents will be able to get traction in SEO? And I will just parenthetically add that we sort of already have that problem to some degree, right? That it's not just the quality of the content. If the site is giant and is entrenched in the results, it's already difficult to beat. Do you think that will get worse?
By the way, let me just say that I do not, believe that having a writer who is not a subject matter expert writing a piece of content on a like your money, your life topic, like something about a medical condition, is more ethical than having AI writing a piece of content about that same topic, right? So I think that to a certain extent, to a certain degree, we already have this problem, in the sense of there is so much like bad content out there. There's no difference as far as I'm concerned whether this content has been written by humans or by AI, right? The point is that it doesn't demonstrate expertise. It lacks like product knowledge and experience and so on and so forth. So I think that this is a problem that, as far as I'm concerned, we already have, right? And if you take a look at many different search engine results pages, you will see that many results look very much like every other result on the top 10 or whatever. Okay, I think that AI content will just amplify that. It will be 10x the problem than what we currently face and experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also feel like the messier search results get, the more of an opportunity there is to build an audience and grow traffic from other sources. like newsletters, like social followings, like community, things like that. Because then it's like you're sort of guaranteeing that it's people talking to people as opposed to machines talking to people who may not even want the stuff that you're offering. I wanted to ask you, George, about tools. I mean, I know you mentioned earlier that a lot of the tools in the space are kind of like different UI UX on top of the same technology. Have you found, or are you willing to share some of the tools that you have found yourself using and liking? Um, I would just be curious, like if there's any direction we can point folks to, like easy places to get started.
That's a good question, but I will be completely honest. First of all, I know some like agencies and marketplaces have taken a stance on AI content, and they basically said that we use it. At Minusia, our stance is that we don't use it for content creation, and we will not use it because we want our writers and editors and like content leads to keep their jobs, and we want our clients to know that this content is being created by humans, so we don't use them. And in that context, I guess I'm not the best to answer that question, because the main one that we have experimented with, and like I hope that was obvious throughout the presentation, is ChatGPT. And I mean, there are, as I mentioned previously, there are some changes, but the source is the same, right? And this also goes back to the point I made about like seeing monopolies of like generative AI in the future, which there will be a recording of that video. If this is going to be the case in the future, the time will tell. But yeah, as far as tools, I know there are many options out there, but I guess I'm not the best to point people to a certain direction.
Got it. Fair enough. We've had quite a few people ask about getting access to the slides, the recording, some of the links you mentioned. Yes, we will email all of that out. If not this afternoon, we'll send it out first thing tomorrow. And I think that about does it. We're just about out of time. George, thank you so much. Would really encourage folks to go check out some of the other webinars we've done with George, particularly that content strategy one. That one was a hit. A lot of really good, kind of like foundational material in there. So we can link to some of those when we send out our follow-up email. So thank you, George. And thanks so much, everybody, for coming.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Take care, everybody.